Alright guys, let's get into this triple Fire King structure deck profile. I decided to try and make this deck as pure as possible, so it's probably not the best variant of the deck, but it is pretty much a pure Fire King deck profile. Kicking things off, we've got triple copies of our Sacred Fire King Garunix. This is a really awesome boss monster for the deck, because if your monster or monsters that was originally fired is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon this card from your graveyard if it was there when the monster was destroyed, or from your hand even if this card is normal or special summoned. Um, if this card is normal or special summoned, rather, you can destroy one fire, beast, beast warrior, or winged beast monster, and in your hand, deck, or face-up field except Sacred Fire King Garunix, and if you do, this card gains attack equal to half of the destroyed monster's attack it had until the end of this turn. You can only use each effect of Sacred Fire King Garunix once per turn. And then we have triple copies of the legendary Fire King Ponix, which is a really awesome little card too, as this lets you, if your monster that was originally fire is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add one Fire King spell or trap from your deck to your hand, which is really awesome. And then during your next standby phase, after this card was in your deck, after this card was destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can add this card from your graveyard to your hand. You can only use each effect of Fire King Ponix once per turn. So there's some really cool cards as well. Next up, we've got triple copies of Fire King Avatar Rang Bali. If a face-up Fire King monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, is destroyed by card effect, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. And when a spell or trap card or effect is activated while this card is on the field, quick effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy one other fire monster in your hand or face-up field. You can only use each effect of Rangbali once per turn. We've got triple copies of Fire King High Avatar Kirin. During the main phase, if this card is in your hand, quick effect, you can destroy one other fire monster in your hand or face up on the field, and if you do, special summon this card. If this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon one Fire King monster from your hand or graveyard except Fire King High Avatar Kirin. Then you can destroy one card on the field. You can only use each of the effects of Fire King High Avatar Kirin once per turn. So just a really good disruption and board breaker. Then we've got triple copies of Fire King High Avatar Garunix. Once per turn, during your next standby phase after this card was destroyed by card effect and sent to the graveyard, special summon this card from your graveyard. If you do, destroy all other monsters on the field, and when this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon one Fire King monster from your deck except High Avatar Garunix, which is really awesome. Really good to have a board breaker monster in your main deck as well as your extra deck. And then moving on, we've got triple copies of Fire King Avatar Garunix, which is really awesome because this is another one of your normal summons for the deck. If a face-up Fire King monster you control would be destroyed by card effect except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand if it is in your possession, or from your hand rather, and then if this card is in your possession, is destroyed by an opponent's card and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon one Fire King Avatar monster from your deck, which is why I decided to max out on as many of them as I possibly could. Moving on, we have triple copies of Fire King Avatar Arvada. Arvada is really cool because when an effect when a monster's effect is activated while this monster is on the field, quick effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy one other fire monster in your hand or face-up field. If this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can target one fire beast, beast warrior, or winged beast monster in your graveyard except Avatar Arvada, and special summon it, but negate its effects. Also, destroy it during the end phase. You can only use each effect of Fire King Arvada once per turn. And then moving on to our one-ofs, we have one copy of Sacred Phoenix of Neptus. Once per turn, during your next standby phase after this card was destroyed by card effect and sent to the graveyard, special summon this card from your graveyard, and if you do, destroy all spells and traps on the field. So this is your spell and trap version of your your Avatar Garunix or your High Avatar Garunix. Being able to wipe out all the monsters on your opponent's field, or monsters on the field. This does the same, but with spells and traps. And then we have one copy of Barong. Could probably play 3. But for this, I just decided to go with 1. If a face-up Fire King monster you control is destroyed by card effect, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. And then once per turn, during the next standby phase after this card was destroyed by a card effect and sent to the graveyard, add 1 Fire King from your deck to your hand, except Fire King Avatar Barong. And then we have the one copy of the regular Fire King Avatar Kirin. If a face-up Fire King monster you control is destroyed by a card effect, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. And if this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can send 1 fire monster from your deck to the graveyard. And then lastly, for our monsters, we have the one copy of Fire King Avatar Yaksha. Again, if a face-up Fire King monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, except during the destroyed by card effect, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. And if this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can destroy 1 card in your hand or field, and you can only use this effect of Yaksha once per turn. Moving on to the spells, we have triple copies of Fire King Island. This is a really cool field spell, especially for the deck, because if this card is in the field zone and is sent to the graveyard or banished, destroy all monsters you control, and you can only use one of the following effects of Fire King Island per turn, and only once that turn. So during your main phase, you can destroy 1 monster in your hand or field, and if you do, add a Fire King monster from your deck to your hand. Or you can use if you control no monsters, you can special summon a Fire King Winged Beast monster from your hand. And then we have triple copies of Fire Formation Tenki. Tenki is really cool because this lets you pretty much search anything in your deck that is a Beast Warrior monster, as long as it's level 4 or lower. And all Beast Warrior monsters you control gain 100 attack, and you can only activate 1 Fire Formation Tenki per turn. And then we have the Fire King Sanctuary as another one of our continuous spells. This is a really cool card because when this card is activated, you can place 1 Fire King Island from your deck face up in your field zone. Once per turn, if a card in your field zone would be destroyed by a card effect, you can destroy 1 fire monster in your hand or face up field instead. Once per turn, if your opponent special summons a monster, you can immediately after this effect resolves, Xyz summon 1 Fire Xyz monster using only Fire King monsters you control. You can only activate 1 Fire King Sanctuary per turn. This is a really cool card in conjunction with your extra deck because not only can you use its effect to help protect your field spell, but you can use its effect to special summon one of your Xyz monsters in your extra deck that can also be able to wipe your opponent's board. Lastly, for our spells, we have triple copies of Fire King Skyburn. This lets you target equal numbers of Fire King monsters you control and cards your opponent controls and destroy them. If a Fire King card you control would be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead, and you can only use 1 Fire King Skybird effect per turn, and only once that turn. It's just a really good way of being able to quickly get rid of your opponent's monsters and or interruptions or bait negates, because your opponent's not going to want to have their entire field pretty much just blown to bits. Lastly, for our main deck, we have triple copies of Echelon of the Fire Kings. This lets you special summon 3 fire monsters, 1 beast, 1 beast warrior, and 1 wing beast from each hand, deck, and graveyard, but their effects are negated. Also destroy them during the end phase. You can banish this card from your graveyard this turn, and then this turn, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects when you normal summon or special summon Fire King monsters. You can only use each effect of Echelon of the Fire Kings once per turn. Moving on to our extra deck, it's pretty much just every copy of every extra deck monster we have. So we've got triple copies of Hida, the Fire Charmer Ablaze. This is a really cool card because it requires 2 monsters, including a fire monster. And then you can target 1 fire monster in your opponent's graveyard, special summon it to your zone that this card points to. And if this link summon card is destroyed by battle or card effect, while in its owner's possession, you can add 1 fire monster with 1500 or less defense from your deck to your hand. You can only use each of the effects of Hida once per turn. This is just really good, especially to be able to get some of your opponent's fire monsters, if they have any, out of their graveyard and use it to your advantage. Then we have triple copies of Diamond Dire Wolf, which is an interesting card. This requires 2 level 4 monsters. Once per turn, you can detach 1 material from this card, then target 1 beast, beast warrior, or winged beast monster you control and 1 other card on the field and destroy them. And then we have triple copies of Coach King Giant Trainer. This is a really cool card as well, which requires 3 level 8 monsters. You can detach 1 material from this card, draw 1 card and reveal it. Then, if it was a monster, inflict 800 damage to your opponent. You cannot conduct your battle phase the turn you activate this effect. You can only use this effect of Coach King Giant Trainer up to thrice per turn, which is a really interesting card. But it's just kind of used as your main extra deck boss monster, or at least one of them. And then here we have our main extra deck boss monster, which is Garunix Eternity, Hyang of the Fire Kings. This requires 2+ level 8 monsters, and if this card is Xyz summoned, destroy all other monsters on the field. You can detach 1 material from this card, then target 1 spell or trap on the field and destroy it. And if you do, this card gains 500 attack. If this card is destroyed while it has materials, you can special summon Fire King monsters from your graveyard up to the number of materials this card had. You can only use each effect of Garunix Eternity, Hyang the Fire King once per turn. Pretty much this entire deck is just about destroying your opponent's board and trying to capitalize from there. But let's move on to our side deck. I decided to make this a bit of a hand trappy kind of side deck. So starting things off, we have triple copies of Judgment. No need to really say anything about this card. Just pretty much pay off your life points, negate the summon or activation of a monster or spell or trap, which is really awesome. Then we have triple copies of Impermanence because it is pretty much the only hand trap that we have in the deck, aside from Droll and Lockbird. And then we've got triple copies of Doggeran, the Mad Flame Kaiju. This works really well with the deck because it is fire-based, and pretty much it just helps get rid of your opponent's monsters. And then we have Droll and Lockbird to be able to stop your opponents from searching, especially if they are playing a search-heavy deck. And it's the other hand trap in the deck, so figured why not include it. And then lastly, we have triple copies of Alpha, the Master of Beasts. Just a really good overall card, especially because we have a lot of beast warriors, and wing beasts. So it can definitely be used in this deck to its fullest potential. But there are other cards that you could put in the side deck. Like I said, this deck does really well with blowing up your opponent's monsters and stuff like that. So there is like Dark Hole that you could use in conjunction with all of these cards. But I just found that right now, this is probably the best version of a side deck for this specific variant of the deck, as it does help with some meta relevance and just overall synergy with the dead.